All right, everybody. It says I'm live and I feel alive, so that's a good start. But I need your approval. So if you guys can let me know if you can hear me and see me in the chat, that always makes things a lot easier for me. And besides that, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. And I appreciate all of you showing up every Monday because it makes for a good start to the week. Regardless of what's going on in the rest of the world, we're at least able to hang out, communicate, and kind of keep things rolling. So good. Glad to see everybody 5x5 coming through. That is good to see and hear because you never know. It's just how this whole thing works, right? Now, let's see here. I want to say hello. We've got Simply the Girls, Isaac Haney. We've got the Pokemon Dentist, which is an interesting profession, I will say. Let's see. Gordy LaChance, Bobby Collins, William Pence, Kelly Rudolph, Corporal America Preparedness. Good to see you all. Now, I do want to go ahead and just start with saying that, yes, the thumbnail of this live stream was on the brink. I think we all know we're on the brink of a lot of things, not just necessarily escalated conflict, but I do think that we are on the brink of witnessing a certain amount of negativity here very soon. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily anything dangerous, but I do mean desperation related to the cost of living, related to crime, related to everything else in this country that's going to be falling apart while the rest of the world is focused on other things that could be a lot more major. So we're really in a bad spot. Honestly, if we were at our strongest, with what's happening overseas right now, it wouldn't be as concerning. But to me, what we should be most concerned about, more so than like any kind of attack or something like that, is the fact that we're actually relatively weak right now economically, and just as a country, we're not in a good place. Just a year or two ago, people were talking about the concept of civil conflict being a likely scenario, and now we're dealing with this. So if you know what I mean, basically, we're not really prepared as a country to deal with what's happening right now. This is why these things are happening right now. And this is something that I want to talk about tonight because we're on the brink for a lot of reasons, but definitely one of those reasons is the decisions that have been made over the last few years when it comes to the government and people who are in charge moving things forward in a direction we probably don't want to go in. Now, RL says lots of North Carolinians here. I'm just going to go with that. Either way, that's good. And I want you guys to network, and I want you to be able to communicate as best as possible. Make sure you guys jump into the Discord if that's something you're interested in, just because it's always a good way to meet other people who are like-minded. And we have channels for every state as well as multiple different countries for people to try to meet other preppers, basically. So here you go. Exile Reviews, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for modding. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. Now, a quick update just to kind of get things rolling here and talk about relative things that are happening. Of course, it's always important, but I want you guys to always kind of just be aware of where things are. And right now, obviously, we'll go ahead and just share this whole live tracker as to what's going on right now. But the one concern I have right now is this whole NATO country calling for a no-fly zone. Obviously, we know if a no-fly zone exists, then the probability of hot conflict becomes almost guaranteed. Basically, it's Estonia who's calling for this. Now, Estonia is a very small country that is part of NATO, and obviously whatever they do will still reflect on the rest of NATO because of, I believe it's Article 5. So that being said, this is just what they're pushing, and I think we all know that this push exists and pre-existed this notion from Estonia, but this is just one more piece of the puzzle for the justification to exist there. It should concern you. We do not want to get involved in this if we don't have to, and obviously they're trying to make a situation occur that makes us have to, and that I think is a big issue. As preppers, I would say, regardless of your feelings toward the situation and the stance on what's happening around other parts of the world, one of your greatest assets in survival is your ability to avoid a threat to begin with. So my concept with what's happening right now is I'd like to avoid seeing anything worse come out of the situation. But unfortunately, I feel like we're being pushed towards that more and more every day. And it seems very well articulated via the media that this is what the rest of America wants, even if that may or may not be the case. So let's see here. So this is obviously something they're looking for. This is an update tracker. This is with Fox News, but there's a million others that you could go to if you wanted to. Let's see here. one thing I did want to say that I thought was interesting, I did see it on this feed, so I'm just trying to find it once again. Just some more, I would say, clear, undercutting of what's going on in the general sense of things. But maybe I can't find it right this second. But either way, I was looking at part of the article that was basically saying how they only like Russia has like 10 days left of supplies, or they're economically not able to support anything else, and they're running out of ammunition, things of that nature. And I believe it was like an ex-lieutenant general who was commenting on it. And I find it very interesting to see a country that has one of the largest war machines in the entire planet suddenly running out of ammunition in the middle of what is relatively still a small conflict compared to what a global conflict would look like. So we're seeing a lot of that being put out there. And I don't know if that's meant to keep people positive or just try to make people think that there's more chances here of them having a losing battle, but it's interesting that you keep hearing more and more about that. So let's see here. Keith Wingo says, don't waste money on CBRN gear. I guess, but my opinion on that is if it's stuff that I need, I definitely need it. So that's your opinion, but I'm going to have some regardless. And then if I need it, I'll definitely use it. And then everyone else that doesn't have it probably won't be around very long because they didn't have it. Just my 2 cents, especially when it comes to all the unrest we saw back in 2020 and the amount of like CS gas and stuff like that was being used. I think that we could all agree that there might be times where a gas mask would be very necessary, even if it wasn't related to some kind of nuclear event. Now, Jasper Moon, I'm in the Discord. Awesome. Glad you made it. Make sure you meet some people and check out your state. Let's see here. Now, I definitely think that things are kind of changing in the sense of the tide in this country. And there's some interesting points I want to bring up there. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the things going on like right this second. Then we're going to move into what's happening here at home, which is kind of interesting, at least to me at this point in time. And then we're going to move into other issues we're seeing happen around the world right now in the relation to what's happening here at home and why these threats suddenly exist. Things that we have to discuss and that I think we should be aware of. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into this other article here. And this just kind of happens to be the way I have this all structured tonight, trying to be quick here. But this is the whole thing about Estonia calling for the no-fly zone. So what I'm trying to say is that the reason we've avoided this already is because of the concept of escalation occurring. But I think that we're going to see more calls for this. And I think the popular opinion is going to be that this needs to exist. And the more, I guess you would say, civilian casualties that are reported on that are happening there in Ukraine right now, the more you're going to find the general population in favor of these measures, regardless of what their concept of the consequences would be. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in time you might see some even de facto style no-fly zone exist, and that is going to cause a lot of problems, at least in my opinion. So those are things to consider. Now, what's happening at home, and then how does that apply to the additional threats that we're seeing from around the world? And I'm sorry if the quality of the stream isn't that great tonight. It seems like it degrades itself automatically once it transfers from StreamYard over to YouTube. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but hopefully it's something we can improve on here in the future. Now, because the camera is fine, and what I see on my side is great, but what you guys are seeing is not, so I don't understand. Either way, Chrissy Michelle, Idaho, checking in. Good to see you. And the Bitter Critter, hello as well. Now, what are we talking about? Well, honestly, things aren't that great here right now. So obviously, Ukraine is having a much worse time, and we can't belittle that situation, but we still have to pay attention to what's going on here in the United States, because that's where we are and that's where we're preparing, okay? Watson Holt, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And it is odd times, but we're here and we're together, which is really important, I think. So now, keep in mind that this key inflation measure has jumped to the highest level since January of 1982, which is 40 years ago. I just had to realize that the other day that, like, wow, this is 40 years ago. I was watching the movie The Day After recently, which came out in 1983. And it's just crazy to think that a movie that old that still depicted a terrible situation that we are discussing lately here in the preparedness community still has relevancy and is 40 years old now, which is crazy. But John Lithgow is the man. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So inflation. The consumer price index showed up at 7.9% year over year from the period ending in February. Now, understand that that doesn't include a lot of things when it comes to overall inflation. And when you look at these numbers, they'll tell you things like, gas has risen 6.6%, and year over year, they've risen 38%. And food over the past 12 months went up 7.9%, which is the largest jump since July of 1981. So, yes, those numbers are very high in the sense of inflation, and that number is only going to get worse, in my opinion. But what I will say is that that doesn't account for the actual price increases that we're seeing at the store. So that 7.9% is not how much more we're paying for groceries. We're paying much more, at least in my opinion. And I think many of you are feeling the same way right now, considering the fact that, like I saw in the chat earlier, someone said that they've been going to the grocery store, going to Walmart to get groceries, and they spend $350, and it didn't used to cost that much. And I totally understand that. And I'm seeing that right now anytime I go shopping as well. So 7.9% is really bad, in all honesty. But what we're paying is more than 7.9% more than what we used to pay. So don't let those numbers fool you into thinking that things aren't so bad. In reality, I would say the price increases I'm seeing and paying is at least 20%. And that's just anecdotal from my area. But you guys can tell me in the chat how much more you feel like you're paying. But I have seen some interesting things in my purchase histories from eBay or Amazon and stuff like that, where if you look at the same item again now from, if you bought it maybe 2 years ago, look it up now and you'll see the price difference and be a little bit concerned. I almost guarantee it. The other thing to keep in mind is that basically the shortages and the empty shelves thing hasn't necessarily gone away, but they're always going to strategize ways to reduce that negative exposure, right? Optics matter. So companies aren't going to want to have empty shelves. So I've noticed, at least at my grocery stores, and I don't know if you've seen the same, but I've noticed an increase in additional brands and some new brands showing up for the budget tier groceries that didn't used to exist in my area. So these are strategies that they're doing in order to pull things to the front and make it look good once again. But either way, the supply is still in the same position it was, 3 months ago when empty shelves was a big deal, trending all over the internet. Things have gotten a little bit different since then, and people like to forget very quickly now, don't they? Freedom Convoy. So now let's get rid of that graphic, okay? And I want you guys to just let's just talk about something. And this is not going to be necessarily political, okay? But this is going to show you the sentiment of the country right now. And it is an interesting place for us to be in, okay? When it comes to politics, right? And when it comes to the dichotomy of what we're dealing with these days in the sense of the two-party system. I am not heavily invested in anything related to the political system, but I keep my eye on it because it affects our daily lives, as you know. And of course, there are groups of ideologies that I might side with more, but in general, preparedness doesn't necessarily have much to do with ideology unless you want to apply the Second Amendment or something along those lines to preparedness, which many times I do. Either way, it is interesting to see how people are reacting to what's going on right now and starting to realize some interesting correlations. So I just wanted to throw this out there as a precursor to show why things might be not necessarily worse right this second, but are definitely getting worse. And that tension around the world is actually starting to escalate. So, and I see you guys all in here talking about your price increases and stuff like that. And I hear you and I feel you, because it's definitely a lot more expensive than what 7.9% would make you think, isn't it? Now, let's talk about this. This is a little bit of pop culture and politics combined, but I think it's interesting, okay? So this is a recent thing that happened, right? So Trevor Noah is a comedian on Comedy Central. I really just don't like him. He doesn't really vibe with me, and I don't think he's funny. But, he's got a big following, I'm sure. Either way, his recent rant about what happened in the sense of a phone call being rejected to the UAE and Saudi Arabia by our current chief of, well, let's just call it the president. Let's just say that it's interesting that people are correlating what's going on right now to not necessarily being able to happen to the previous administration. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of the connotation here was more of the wild card, unpredictable factor that, the previous White House had. But at the end of the day, this is still something that people who are famously popular for being a certain ideology are starting to have to come out and say and admit, which it should interest you, at least to the point of showing how the country's feeling about our current situation and how things are moving in that direction, because people are upset. And then the same thing happened with Bill Mayer, which basically said, why didn't this happen 2 years ago? Well, I think we all have our thought process as to why this didn't happen 2 years ago. Now, the reason I'm sharing this, like I said, this isn't for political points or anything along those lines, because honestly, both parties, in my opinion, can kick rocks, and we definitely need to figure something better out at this point in time, because it's just not working, if you haven't noticed. But either way, this should show you that people are at least getting used to the idea that this current situation we have in place here in the United States is not doing a good job of keeping these things from happening. And in fact, they're getting worse. So as a precursor to what we're going to be talking about next here, we're going to see why all these things are somewhat linked together, and why countries are starting to act in a certain way due to the fact that there's probably not going to be much consequence related to any of their actions here anytime soon. Now that I have some more coffee and I feel like a real person once again, and I hope everybody's cool with my 3-dog night look I have going right now, but Jeremiah was indeed a bullfrog, so that's just what it is. Let's see here. Thomas Jackson says he's secretly based. All right, and then Chris Petton says he won't use nukes, but he will most likely press on Poland to see what we will do. And here's the thing, and Chris Petton, I think that there, might be some validity to your statement there, but I am in the camp of not having any absolutes about this current situation. I won't say he won't use nukes. In all reality, tactical nukes are very probable if things get in a, let's just say, opposition stance. If things start to push back to the point where they don't have a way out without looking defeated, I don't see that being a problem for them, especially when you talk about low yield things. And then if you're in the Discord, this is good stuff because people share interesting tidbits from the internet. Now, I can't verify or validate a lot of these tidbits, so I don't report on them necessarily. But what I will say is that there's talk about things like a low yield tactical strike on an empty part of the United States, just to basically send a message that won't have any kind of collateral damage, but we'll just say, look what we can do. Interesting things that are going around the internet at this point in time from people who may or may not be in a certain country. That being said, hey, Northern Girl Hubbies, thank you so much for being here and modding. Let's talk about a couple things, okay? So here's something I think you guys should have some interest in and also be aware of, in the sense of like things that are going to hit you in the pocketbook and things that aren't going to necessarily fix your problems that you think they will right this second. Just something to open your mind about what's happening, especially related to gas prices, because I know that's a huge problem right now. Trust me, I filled my truck and it's just sitting in my driveway now. So I'm just like, I don't really want to drive the truck right now, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and talk about this next little tidbit, okay? So here's something that I thought was interesting. Now, this is not the best news article. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is from WUSA 9. It's a CNBC affiliate. It says, if the U.S. doesn't get much oil from Russia, why are gas prices skyrocketing? And the main point of this article that I wanted to drive home is that the prices are set at a global level, right? Okay, so let's consider that, right? And I believe at the end of the day, the article was able to deduce that only 3.3% of our oil comes from Russia, right? That's all, or that's how much we exported last year, something along those lines, okay? So keep in mind that we don't get a lot of oil from Russia, but oil is like a commodity that's traded basically, right? So fears of shortages or supply disruptions or anything along those lines make the prices go up, just like if it is the stock market basically, right? Or let's say precious metals. So this is a global price that is set on oil, not just what America decides, right? And especially with people moving further away from the petrodollar being based on the US dollar, well, then we're going to see more of this problem hitting us no matter what we do next. So that being said, A, I want you to prepare for the long haul on this gasoline situation, okay? And B, keep in mind that Russia provides 10% of the global supply of oil, okay? So if this is a global price situation, I want you to consider this concept. If we literally cut off all exports or imports of oil, right? And exports, let's just say, and we decided to only drill and provide the United States with oil, right? Which would be great, energy independence, right? at this point in time, with the current system that's in place, the oil that we would make here would still have prices decided by a global system based on the fact that oil is a traded commodity. So a lot of things would have to change for that to not affect us. But anytime we cut off an import, we're actually hurting our own oil prices, even if, or I guess like helping them if you want to look at it from the point of view of the oil companies. But regardless, we aren't in charge of that price. So by stopping imports from Russia, we're still going to raise the price of oil, even if we filled that 3.3% gap in with our own oil tomorrow. So I don't want everyone to think that this solution is so obvious and so easily accomplished, because the solution sounds great. And I would love to see energy independence, because we should be a net exporter, right? Oh, we easily could be. And there's a lot of reasons why we're not. But what I would say, okay, is that apparently we aren't actually going to be able to make a big difference even if we do that tomorrow. So keep these things in mind. This is just information for you to understand that you need to prepare for the gasoline situation to get continually worse for quite a while, at least in my opinion. And I do think that the vitriol surrounding the pipeline and everything else. Well, I agree. We should definitely still have the pipeline. I live in oil country. Trust me, it would be a really unpopular opinion for me to sit here and say, well, I don't think we should have the pipeline. Nah, that's crap. We should have it. It makes more sense. It's more environmentally friendly. It's more economical and more efficient, which is what everything should be, right? But at the end of the day, it's just not going to happen. So that being said, even if we opened it up tomorrow, and even if everything was done in-house tomorrow, the prices would still be dictated by a global conglomerate, which is going to not fix the problem. So keep these things in mind. Just wanted everyone to be aware of it. Let's see here. So law of the minimum. I've heard people at work talk about stocking up on food. I think the panic buying will start within this week. Thanks so much for the magic intel. I couldn't even read that the way you wanted me to, because magic intel just sounds a little bit too good. Okay, so law of the minimum. Yeah, once the average person starts discussing things like stocking up on food, getting extra fuel being stolen from vehicles, everything else that's going on right now, it's hard for the general public to actually ignore everything, especially when it's a financially impactful situation, which is what the gasoline shortage is, or not the shortage, but the price hike. So that being said, I agree. I think that people are going to start catching on and doing more and more and more. And I did see, I'm not sure. I want to say it was like a Dabu video, right? We all know who that is. But what I'm trying to say is that the video came up in my feed, and it was like, people are buying ammo because of all this, and there's going to be another shortage. And look, regardless of everyone's opinion on it, well, talking about it makes it worse. Well, it's going to happen because the general population is talking about it. So that's just where it is. All right. So, and let's see here. Oki Khan says, or Oki Khan, I don't know how to say it. I hope I did it right. Says, our own government is imploding us. Who needs nukes? Well, you know what? I agree. I think things are definitely falling apart in many ways. But don't be fooled by the concept that if something was to escalate to the point of conflict between two major superpowers, that would almost become an issue, because somebody would have to maintain authority of domination, right? And in a way, you can't get that without pulling some kind of a trigger, okay? And that's just kind of how I would assume things would work. And that's one of the things, I didn't say this in my last video that I kind of wanted to, but keep in mind, if something catastrophic happened right now in Ukraine, let's say there was like the use of gas or something like that, it was an atrocity and everyone was upset. Even if it was the old FF or something else like that, keep in mind that don't be surprised if a country like Russia would have to claim responsibility for it to maintain that authoritative stance that they currently have, to maintain that they have control over what's happening on the ground there. So those possibilities exist. Don't be, afraid of the idea that even if something happens that isn't them, they might still say it is, which will then in turn justify retaliation, which then keeps going from there. These are all things we have to be concerned about, okay? Let's see here. Thanks to all the new members coming in. I appreciate it. We have, I'm going to say it's like Georgi Laboranovitz or Laboranovitz. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with that one, but I like it. It's interesting. And then Chris Barnes, thank you so much, okay? Now, sorry, my thing's trying to sell me my own channel membership now. All right, and then Dorian Gray, I'm glad you feel that way. So I appreciate any compliments, and I actually appreciate the insults as well. It helps me self-reflect, and it keeps me grounded. So thank you all for that as well. Now, what I will say, QUSMC, what up, Magic? Good to see you as well. Glad you're here. And then Rick James is here too. So I hope that's the real Rick James, and I'm going to assume it is because, man, that guy would just make for a great party. Moving on, okay? Weapons have been used. Things that we have to talk about. This is, I'm going to say that this is more about the idea of justification than anything else, okay? This has some validity to it. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that the reporting on it is that this has been used, and we know there's a confirmed use of the TOS-1A weapon system in Ukraine, right? Okay, so a vacuum bomb, what does it do? Basically, it shows you right here, explodes a small cloud of gas, which is an explosive material, which then ignites and vaporizes things within its radius, and then creates a vacuum, which like sucks all the oxygen out of the area, which literally will like implode people's lungs. So it's a pretty bad weapon system, but obviously in war, things like this are going to be used. So what does this tell us? Well, here's a couple things I want you to consider regarding this information particularly. One, there's a hyper focus on it being used, okay? And it's not necessarily a illegal type of weapon, I guess is what you would say, but it is a very regulated one, I guess. And the thing that you should consider is that these things are on the table. And this is the kind of stuff when people say things like, Wolverines won't ever work because what are you going to do against something like this, right? And there's some definite truth to that statement when you look at the destructive capability of things like this being used. But the other thing that you have to consider is that this isn't being used like a carpet bomb situation. It's not being used on every corner of every street. So just keep in mind the hyper focus here is more of that justification that has to be required before additional steps are taken. But if these things are being used, they're going to be focused on, no matter how you look at it. And what they do to people is very easy to use as an emotional response for the general population to say, this is so bad, we have to do something. So that's what I think you guys should definitely keep in mind, okay? Arkansas whoop ass, good to see you. Glad you're here. And this is just something else that they're putting out there for you to know. Whether or not it's something you needed to know, you're going to get people that have that emotional reaction to it, and it's going to push things more and more into the territory that we want to avoid. I don't want to see anyone in NATO actually enter this conflict because that means we are in it. And that means that things get really interesting in a bad way very quickly. So those news stories and that hyper focus on those singular events that are occurring, they're terrible events and the world should know about it. But at the same time, they're using it as a way to push your opinion towards acceptance more so than anything else. That's just my opinion. Okay. Now, let's see. AK Slamfire. I mean, yeah, I guess exactly. So, an OFC nation says those same weapons were used in Afghanistan frequently. I don't know that information off the top of my head. I can't validate that or verify it, I guess. But if that's true, then I mean, and I wouldn't doubt it because often hypocrisy runs pretty rampant when it comes to war, doesn't it? Now, let's see here. A couple things I want to go over. Okay. Okay. Now, I want you guys to have some concepts here as to other things that are happening. Now, I will say I have to give credit where credit's due. And Klingon Princess, good to see you here. Sunflower mushroom just looks like a nice place to be, apparently. So I like that. But here's something we have to consider. Now, I will always give credit where it's due, and I'm not trying to seem like I'm the guy who's on top of every single thing that doesn't need any help or doesn't use any other resources, okay? And Exile Reviews, if you can post the Discord info in the live chat, that'd be great. So this information was actually brought out today from, at least from my knowledge, from Canadian Prepper, who talked about the fact that these Arctic bases are actually being filled once again in with Russian, equipment and soldiers. So basically, it's problematic because it puts us closer and closer to an aggressive foreign adversary, and Canada is, of course, very concerned with it. Canada's defense chief says protecting the country's Arctic region is a key priority for the armed forces, warning that Russia has reoccupied abandoned Cold War bases in its far north. that is something that should concern us because Canada is our buffer between those Arctic bases now at this point. So that just basically shows you that this escalation and this aggression is actually occurring. And this is an example that I wanted to share with you guys about the escalation. And part of the reason for it is obviously because of the lack of confidence within the United States Foreign Affairs Leadership Department. That's how I'm going to put that right now. This is happening. And Canada, I mean, unless Canada is just straight lying to everybody, but I have a feeling they're not. And these old Cold War bases. So not only are they moving into the backyard very quickly and very closely, but at the same time, we are basically witnessing Cold War maneuvers once again, which should concern you because if that's the direction we're headed, even if things don't turn hot, we're not going to get out of this conflict in a very positive or meaningful way. It's going to be another Cold War situation, which could last for a very long time and keep everybody on edge and on their toes for a very long time. I don't expect to see school children learning how to hide under their desk, but I do expect to see public fallout shelters maybe becoming more of a thing once again, possibly the bunker business getting even busier. I'm sure Atlas survival shelters can barely keep up as it is, but these are things that are happening. So now, and let's see, Oi d'etudiant, moderators. I'm not sure what we're moderating, but there's a lot of things happening, I'm sure. So give me 1 second here. Now, one thing I want to talk about. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of movement here on the channel. I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done. I'm trying to expand and be able to do more for the community. So there's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to that. And if you give me 1 second here, I'm gonna try to turn the chat on slow, guys. I know you're freaking out about it and you want me to do it, and I'm gonna try my best to appease you guys. I really am. So let's see here. I think we can do it. What's this gonna let me do? Slow mode. Got it. Okay. Now I'm not gonna do anything crazy, I swear. Let's see if it lets me do it. Okay, I did it. Now you guys let me know if it worked. Otherwise, I'm not doing anything else, I promise. Okay. With this stuff happening in our backyard, people are moving into Canada, everything else. I know a lot of people are kind of concerned and that there's a lot of people who are trying to better their situation when it comes to, I would say, being better prepared and not having to rely on the grid and everything else related to being part of society or a metropolitan area. So one of the companies that I've been working with in order to try to give you guys more options, as well as trying to find more channel support so that I can do more in the sense of sharing preparedness. That's kind of my goal, is to take the property we currently have and turn it into something that can hopefully give people more not information, but more motivation and more ideas about different ways of doing stuff, or how you might want to start out in the sense of homesteading or something along those lines. Because honestly, I'll be an amateur with a lot of those things, and there's a lot of learning to do. But let me go ahead and get rid of this little page here. One thing I want to mention is that I have been working with fleethecity.com. So if you guys are interested in relocating out of the city, right now they're only looking to relocate people to Idaho or Montana. Now, before you freak out, especially you Montanans and Idahoans in the chat right now, I want to tell you something, and it's something I talked to the owner about, but it's something I want you to keep in mind, okay? Here's the thing. People will say, we don't want them and stop moving here and we don't need more neighbors, right? But at the end of the day, these people aren't creating property and they're not creating neighborhoods or anything necessarily. They are working on a preparedness community at some point in time, but that's for a different point in time. What they are doing is vetting people of a like mindset who want to be more prepared and self-reliant, and then helping them get their way to those regions. And so one thing I want to mention is that these people are already selling this property. These houses and these pieces of property are already for sale. This company is trying to get people like you and I to move into them and help that process, because they know being in a metropolitan area is bad for preparedness. They're trying to help people that may want to leave, maybe angry preppers, somebody like that, into those areas that are going to be better for self-sustainment. May they be closer to nuclear targets? Possibly, but so am I. Is that more likely than civil unrest? You tell me. But what I will say is that instead of getting upset about more people moving into the area, understand people are going to buy that property no matter what. This company is moving people like you and I into those properties rather than just whoever wants to. Some, I don't know, IT person from San Jose who decided they don't want to live in the city anymore, but they still want bike trails and want to raise your taxes so that you can pay for them. These are things I want you guys to consider. So yes, I'm working with fleethecity.com. I'm hoping to encourage more of you to leave the city and get out in the country like I was able to do. And it would be hypocritical and basically wrong of me to tell people not to leave the city. You should. Everyone should. If you want to be more prepared, don't live there. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why I chose to work with this company. Not because I'm trying to send everyone to your area. I promise. Idaho, Montana, I love your area. I don't want to send a bunch of people there that are going to ruin the whole vibe. What I'm trying to do is help people who need to leave their area and want to make a better life for themselves and have this preparedness mindset and that pro 2A, ready to be on their own, freedom-loving mindset, and work with a company that's willing to help them get there. So these people that are trying to move there should be people like you and I, not just whoever comes out of the city. Hopefully that makes more sense to you guys. But if you want to try to start that process and you're looking to move to those two states, Idaho or Montana, go to fleethecity.com, fill out the form, and just tell them Magic Prepper sent you. And I appreciate it because they're helping support the channel, but we're also helping more preppers get into a better situation for themselves. Hopefully this makes sense. I wanted to explain that a little better because things were a little bit negative sometimes when it came to that in the past because people are worried about this influx of who knows who, right? Now, moving on from that, T-Raz says Texas is full. Texas is full, and I'm not moving to Texas. A, it's too hot, and the humidity sucks. And B, Texas is way more blue and way more anti-2A than anybody really wants to admit. That's just my 2 cents. I have family there, and I feel bad for the situation that's occurring there. That's just what I'm going to say about it. Anyway, moving on, okay? Don't get me wrong. I love Texas. Don't come hit me. I promise. Here we go. So we are very weak right now in the sense of leadership and in the sense of a standing in the world stage. And it makes me concerned, and this should concern you all as well. Here's the thing, okay? We are seeing things happen in other parts of the world now. And in my opinion, and I think you guys could probably agree with this, a lot of it is opportunity being taken due to the fact that consequences and retaliation don't seem to necessarily exist at this point in time, except for, I don't know, sanctions, which nobody cares about anymore because people are dropping the dollar. We're going to find our own banking system. We're going to start making our money worth more, and nobody cares anymore if somebody says you can't make money like this anymore. Who cares? Especially now with things like crypto, precious metals, and everything else. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I think it was February of 2021 was when Russia actually had more gold in reserve than US dollars. That doesn't mean they're back on the gold standard like some people were reporting recently. But what it means is that all that gold they had was because they knew the US dollar wasn't going to help them at some point. And guess what? It's all worth way more money now too. Amazing. So it's like they almost doubled the money they had overnight because they switched from US dollar to gold. Weird. Now, missile attack in Iraq. Iran says it will not tolerate any threats from Iraqi soil. According to Iran, it's because of all the stuff. We know what stuff it is. And if you guys watch Marfugal, you would know I'm saying all the bad words now. And oh, well, I guess I screwed up tonight. Either way, basically, yeah, Iran is throwing missiles into Iraq, and they're starting to land pretty darn close to an American consulate. But don't worry about it because some news outlets will have you seem like that wasn't really a big deal, and then other news outlets will try to make it seem like it was just like business as usual, which is interesting. And I have a feeling it's because of the nuclear talks that are going on with Iran, right? So this is happening, and A, there's still hasn't been any retaliation or repercussions, and B, if there are, I expect them to be sanctions. So great, good job, but I don't expect them to cancel the nuclear talks that are going on, and that just shows you exactly where we are at this point in time and why countries are starting to lash out towards allies of the United States and expecting nothing to really happen. And especially because a lot of this is probably spurred on from what happened in Afghanistan. Let's be honest. Now, I think that was the start of a lot of these things. Who knows, says North Dakota is going to get hosed. Hey, maybe. But one of the things I've been talking with other people in the area about, and something that I think should be considered. So if you're ever looking to relocate, no matter where it is, and you're looking at like a nuclear target map, right? And you're like, crap, there's a lot of places I guess I can't go. Well, here's the thing. One, I would say lower population density is still a more of a benefit than just being away from a possible nuclear attack zone. A, nuclear attack could be a very unlikely situation, and B, it's a very big unknown scenario versus population always creates problems no matter what in any emergency. Look at Hurricane Katrina, okay? So that being said, I'd still rather be where I am in a low population density area and have that risk of possible nuclear target rather than being in a high population density area and saying, well, at least I'm probably not going to get nuked, which you probably will there too. So there's a lot of that. And then the other thing to consider is that because of mutually assured destruction and the way that our systems are set up, we're either going to shoot first or shoot right after they shoot. And either way, those missile silos aren't going to have much in them after they shoot. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that there's not really a big reason to target those missile silos necessarily. Just throwing it out there, nuclear weapons are very expensive and very important to have after the fact as well, because you don't want to use all of them, because then what if things settle down? You still have to have your power. These are things that I've considered and talked to other people about because I am concerned about that, of course, but I do think that those concerns can be overblown at times. Now, I would say hardened military bases, maybe like Minot Air Force Base, yeah, that could be an issue. Luckily, my location is far enough away from there and in the right direction away from the wind that even fallout from there shouldn't be an issue for me necessarily. But these are things that you have to consider and weigh out when you're making your own decisions. And Three Dogs in a Paw says move to Wyoming, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of targets in Wyoming as well. Dang, I know there is a specific nuclear facility in Wyoming that I can't remember. Cheyenne, does that sound correct? I believe it's Cheyenne. Either way. Now, and Yardbird says you're sitting on a ton of silos. Yeah, exactly. I know. But I have a video coming out tomorrow that's about how much reaction time you might have during like a nuclear event, because I just felt like it was relevant right now. People are interested in the subject, and I thought it was something worth covering and just discussing at a bare minimum. Nothing extraordinarily scientific, but just based on conventional wisdom. And the thing that I stressed in that video as well was just that we just need to have a plan in place regardless of like where we're located, right? So these are things we have to consider and things that, I discussed in tomorrow's video that I thought were relatively important. And then New York Prepper says you can build a good fallout shelter. And yes, you can. And that's something I'll be working on this summer, hopefully, if we make it there. Sorry, I'm being dramatic. That's ridiculous. But either way. Okay. And then there's something else I was going with that. Either way, we'll get it figured out, I promise. This community is here to help each other. And one of the things I can do being in my area that maybe somebody else won't be able to do is hopefully send out maybe some kind of a warning. If I see a launch, I'll probably see it before some of you all, and I'll do my best to be like, yo, what's up? There's a launch, okay? Like I said, no promises because who knows what's happening at that moment. But what I will say is if I see it and I have the opportunity, at least expect like a 5-second video upload if I can, just saying, yo, it's going down. Maybe that'll help. Okay, now, Irish Rebel, by the way, thanks again. I appreciate that. Prepper Now, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Now, are we actually, weak? Are we at the point where like countries are trying more and more escalative tactics to see what they can get away with? I would say yes. So South Korea, and this is from, I believe, this morning, is saying that they believe there will be another ICBM test here very soon. And obviously North Korea just recently tested another ICBM. These tests are provocative in many ways. They aren't necessarily necessary. Let's be honest. They're allies with China, okay? China and them get together, and China has all these weapons, and they don't need to test them, right? But North Korea has to be able to operate on its own volition, so that if there's ever a scenario, there can be what word am I looking for here? Plausible deniability, right? Well, we didn't sanction that attack, and we didn't think they were going to do it. Sorry, USA. So they are pushing more and more, and it's because they can. Nothing's happening. No one's doing anything. So North Korea is like, yeah, fire a missile, let's go. Because last time, like, we just did it, and like nobody cared. So, and I think we're going to see more and more of this. I believe and I think it said, yeah, as soon as Monday. So I don't know if it's happened already. I don't know if it's going to happen here soon, but either way, they're saying that this stuff is happening. And I believe they just recently tested a ICBM that flew into the Sea of Japan. So like they're escalating, and they're escalating towards an ally of the United States. This is a problem, but it's only happening because people are seeing this opportunity and saying, well, we can just do this now. It's not a big deal. And that is starting to really concern me, because people are willing to try stuff. And willing to try stuff should bother us. Let's see. Prepper now says, everybody waving the thing. And that's true. It's emboldening people countries to see what they can do. And every time they do something and nothing really happens, it's going to allow them to do another thing. This is what I'm concerned about. Lucius Blackwood says, what do you do about it? Well, I assume there are some things we could do that we aren't doing due to the fact that we have certain relationships with certain countries that are in that region. The thing is that what I think you should notice is that a lot of these things weren't happening before, and they're happening now. And that's really what the real issue is. It's not about what we're doing. It's the fact that we're doing nothing, and that more of this is going on, which shows that it's going to keep being nothing, which is problematic to our security. I mean, there's no reason for somebody to think that the U.S. is going to do a whole lot right this second, regardless of whether or not we will. Because I'm sure we will if something actually happened to us directly. Guaranteed that. But someone might try, because so far, no big deal. Minuteman69 says, I'm now nominated to be the group's nuclear war warning and alert person. Fair enough. And I'm okay with that. I will do my best, okay? But I got to admit that if I see missiles launching out of the ground where I am, I'm going to maybe forget, because I'll probably be a little freaked out. I'm just going to throw it out there. Don't get mad at me if I forget, okay? Now, I'll try my best. I swear I'll try my best. But I do have a family that may or may not. Okay, we'll definitely have priority over anything else I'm doing at that time. Now, I pack 9mm. The hair is on point. I can appreciate that. A man of taste, or a woman. I never know with you. Anyway, now, let's talk about the consequences, because there's so many of them. And this is what should really have people shaking in their boots. All right. We did it. We announced more sanctions after those missile tests. Great. So if anybody is seeing a pattern here, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Every economy in the world is struggling right now. They did a great job of destroying the global economy 2 years ago. Congratulations, all the people who did the thing and planned the stuff. Now, countries don't have to worry about sanctions because they're already in the crapper. I see a lot of that being talked about right now, especially with Russia, right? Oh, they're running out of money, and oh, their economy can't take it, and oh, they're going to have the worst economy in the last 30 years because of this. I don't think they care. A, they got all the gold, and that's going way up in price, so I'm sure they're feeling pretty good about that. But B, who cares? At a certain point, we're in a country right now with $30 trillion of debt. $30 trillion. Why should we even care? Like, why would the United States even care if somebody sanctioned us? Okay, I guess we'll add it to the debt. That's it. That's all anyone's doing at this point. Every country is just living on a credit card. So, and I'm pretty sure you guys know as well as I do that living on a credit card is bad. And at a certain point, you run out of credit and you go, oh, crap, I guess I'll be homeless now. And that is definitely an issue we have to look forward to here very soon, unless we're looking at a debt relief program right now. And luckily for us, worldwidedebtrelief.com, that's fake. Don't go there. Maybe it's a malware site. Please don't go there and blame me for it. But what I'm trying to say is that we figured it out. Let's get rid of the debt and just have like a giant war, because it would be the best way to get rid of all this debt or not have to worry about it anymore. What if you got rid of the people that you owe all the money to? That'd be a good idea, right? So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not very optimistic about the way things are going right this second. And it's not just because of the potential of like nuclear war or World War III. It's the potential of everyone going to hell in a handbasket together. At least we're together. Let's see here. Carl Miller says, I hope no one in Poland lets go of any red balloons. You know what? That whole escalation of NATO, and that should concern everybody as well. NATO is saying that if one bullet lands on NATO sovereign territory, that they will have to get involved. That's a really low bar. And it wouldn't take a whole lot for, I don't know, like a splinter cell farmer group of a certain nation to just like shoot a bullet at a country on their soil from like a Mosin Nagant. Anyway, all right. Minuteman 69. Sanctions against Japan got us into World War II. Well, here's the thing. Sanctions hurt people economically, and then eventually they get desperate enough to not care about more sanctions, and they get desperate enough to do what they have to do to fix their economy. And one of the easiest ways is through military war machine. And we know the military-industrial complex is having a great day right now. So let's go with the next thing. Okay, so countries that don't care about what anyone else does anymore for 500, Alec. Well, here's one of the other newly situations that arise during this week, right? China says worst consequences for any country that supports Taiwan militarily. Well, interesting. East Tennessee Preparedness says all the war hawks pushing for World War III. Yes, they are. And that is something that you guys should always keep in mind. I don't care what ideology you align with. Red, blue, Republican, Democrat, if you're libertarian or independent, I don't care. What I'm trying to say is that don't forget that the WMDs in Iraq thing was a complete and utter lie, but we went to war for it anyway. And don't forget that the people pushing those narratives happen to sit on generally one side of the aisle in many ways. And those same people that exist in our government right now would love to just do more of this stuff, especially like, I don't know, the fact that they went to certain countries and armed certain outfits of certain types of people that decided they were going to then like hang black flags on Toyota Tacomas. I don't know. That's just stuff that may or may not have happened, but definitely happened from certain groups of people within our government. So China says worst consequences for any country that supports Taiwan militarily. I want you guys to understand that we support Taiwan militarily already in many ways. We have, I believe, forces there that help train their security forces. And I believe we are involved in training their special forces as well. So, yeah, we might have training outfits already there. That should, at least in my mind, be considered, military support. Either way, China's just letting everyone know when we do something like what Russia's doing, you better not do nothing. And I have reason to believe they're probably gonna get that request granted if things move forward. Okay. Existential prepper. Should I get more magazines? Yeah, of course you should. Especially if you have anything niche. Okay. So, and if it's niche, like, get it. That's just my opinion. PMags and stuff, those will be around. Don't worry about that. But like, okay, worry about it. Get some more of those too. But what I'm trying to say is, like, definitely if you have something that isn't manufactured anymore, but you want to keep it up and running, stuff like that, I would just keep an eye out. Anyway, okay. Now, let's talk about this whole thing. China's like, don't touch it, okay? And they're kind of throwing the MC Hammer at us, and that's fine because, they'll probably accomplish whatever goal they might have. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind, and this actually will be discussed a little bit in tomorrow's video as well, but I wanted to share it with you all here first, okay? So keep this in mind. China can station and launch nuclear missiles from space without fear of being intercepted. And this came out December 1st, 2021. So this is relatively, like, present. We're not talking about 10 years ago. This is relatively new technology. And the basic interesting standpoint of what they have going on here is that they have weapons that can go into orbit in space and maintain an orbit indefinitely until they're activated. So yes, satellite weaponry definitely exists. I'm sure of that. I know Russia has weaponized satellites that they've used to destroy other satellites already, but this is a real thing. So all of the stuff going on right now isn't even just related to land-based ICBMs or what could happen, from this place or that place. This stuff can happen from directly above us at any point in time. And this is just a reminder that China has this ability and this technology, right? They still definitely fall far behind in the sense of quantity when it comes to nuclear arsenal compared to the United States, but it doesn't take a lot of nuclear arsenal to actually accomplish what those are for. So keep in mind, this stuff exists, and they can send these hypersonic missiles into orbit And they just chill up there until they don't chill anymore. This is an issue. And this is the country who just said severe consequences for anybody who militarily supports Taiwan. Why would they even be saying that right now? I have no idea. Here's the thing. They're saying it because no one respects what we have going on right this second. That's just my opinion. Do you see what we have going on right now? I don't care. Look, even if I even if this was, let's say, 10 years ago, right? And we had Obama in office still. I still think that would have better results than what we have right this second. Okay. Because I don't think like necessarily every single Democrat would just fold in a foreign affairs crisis like what we're dealing with right now. But I think what we currently have is really bad and looks really bad. And optics really matter on the world stage, especially right now. And we have sanctions that no one cares about. And we have a president who does not speak very well. And we have a vice president who doesn't know the information that they should know, talking to the media and on the world stage and making us look bad to the point where these countries are just going. They're just going. And I'm worried about it. Let's see. Everyone says what happened to my eye. I don't know. I get a weird shadow on my eye when I'm doing these videos. And there's actually no explanation for it. So I don't know. Now, this is just what I'm trying to say. I don't care about your ideology. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. What I'm trying to say is right now, the world, the countries that tend to matter, have the capabilities that we should be concerned about, don't have any respect for our current situation, regardless of what ideology it comes from. And there's reasons behind that. And now what they're seeing is complete inconsequential scenarios unfold where a country like Russia can invade another country that has alliances but isn't part of NATO. And amazingly, it's just still going and nobody has intervened really at all. Besides sanctions and besides banning exports, which luckily they have a neighbor to the south who's more than willing to take those exports off their hands. And that neighbor is now also saying things like, don't mess with Taiwan or we will have major consequences. And guess what? Taiwan, not in NATO. Has alliances, but not in NATO. So maybe nothing would happen there either, except for sanctions and export regulations. And then imagine everyone's public sentiment to say, in this country at least, ban China. We don't want their exports anymore. Okay, well, 95% of everything you buy just went away. Imagine how that would look. So amazing when you can do it to a country like Russia, because not much of our daily consumption is related to Russian-made products. But China's a different story. I don't think it would turn out very well. That's just my opinion. And as much as I love to just say, well, buy American and manufacture in America and bring back American industry, I love that idea. But it won't sustain us any longer because of what we've done to ourselves over these years. And at this point in time, American industry couldn't catch up fast enough to sustain a population of, I believe, getting close to 400 million now. So that being said, we would find ourselves upside down very quickly to the point where we couldn't actually block the exports of China. And then that would then allow them to do the things, I guess, if that's our only response is sanctions and blocking of exportation, which would not work for them, which means the only other option is really bad. So that's why I'm upset. Okay. I just don't like the situation we're in right now. And I don't care how you feel about it. We're on the brink of something major, whether or not it's World War III, whether or not it is the collapse of the dollar, whether or not it is the collapse of society because no one can afford to be in it. And this is something we really have to consider because, look, people are actually, especially with the gas now, people are actually finding out that they'll save money if they leave their job. And that's unfortunate because people are spending more money to get to work than they're making at work. Or they're spending so much money to get to work that they're actually not really making enough to make it worth their time anymore. And that is a big issue, okay? I don't want to be in that situation either, but I think a lot of people are feeling that pressure and wondering what they should do about it. And I saw this recently. So I have friends via Facebook, right? And they're from different parts of the country. And yes, I have many liberal friends on Facebook, which is fine because I don't necessarily disassociate with anybody based on their ideologies, but I do find it interesting how they cope with certain scenarios regarding their current situation. Because as somebody who generally sides more conservatively, I can at least still call a spade, and I can still say when people on that side of the aisle are doing something wrong or not capable of accomplishing their job, which we have lots of on that side of the aisle. In all reality, I'm mostly, I would say, libertarian. Let's just put it that way if you want to know about my politics. But at the end of the day, I just don't buy into a lot of what's happening anymore. That being said, I was reading this post, and it was about how, all these people are upset about gas prices, and they just don't know how gas prices work. And it's not actually the administration's fault. Okay. And okay, great. But then somebody responded, and I read it, and I thought it was very interesting. It was a person who was very poor, and they were poor, and they were conservative. So they were kind of arguing with this person. What they tried to say was, look, I work 2 jobs. They're both pretty much minimum wage. I'm just poor, and I'm not trying to hide that fact. It just is what it is. And at the end of the day, I just seem to fare better under different types of leadership. But either way, I'm getting to the point where I'm so poor, and the gas is so expensive, and everything else is so expensive, and I'm spending so much time working by having 2 jobs that I might just leave my jobs and just see what happens, because I can't even afford to work anymore with how bad things are getting. And I thought that was a very anecdotal thing for people to basically feel that way. I thought it was a very big risk versus reward balancing act. And I have to admit, if I was spending upwards of 16 hours a day at work and could barely afford the gas to get there, and then by the time I got my paycheck at the end of 2 weeks, only had enough money left to scrounge a little bit of food and barely pay my bills and weigh out what utility I'm going to have to live without from now on, I would probably do the same thing. I probably just wouldn't work anymore, because what's the point if you can't really even do it any longer? And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of people in that situation now that are having to make those decisions, which is very bad, because that's just going to hurt us even further. Don't be fooled. There's still a labor shortage. We're still really bad off economically. People are still being evicted out of their homes and still trying to figure out how to pay back the last 2 years of either not working or reduced pay or whatever else it is. If you're a business owner, you're probably still figuring out how you're going to get by tomorrow. And yeah, there's so much attention being paid to what's happening overseas right now that this whole situation we're finding ourselves in is kind of being forgotten about for a minute, right? But people are really feeling this and actually experiencing this in real life. And that is going to have a huge impact on both you and I, whether or not we like it. And I don't know about you guys, but I see now hiring signs like everywhere I go. And it's kind of sad, because I know people need jobs. And I think that people have figured out that like that job's literally not worth their time, because they can't justify the amount of time to be spent there to not have any money at the end of the day. I don't know what to say about it. That's just where we're at. And everyone could say, well, the companies need to pay more. Then you and I aren't going to be able to afford anything that company can provide. And then that just creates the bigger problem, which I don't know how we're going to get out of, because it seems like a giant snowball effect that is just rolling down that hill faster and faster every day. And it's really starting to get me concerned, because we're losing sight of some of these issues that are happening domestically, and they're not getting better necessarily. So, kill it and grill it. You will own nothing and be happy. And that is the mantra of certain entities in the world right now. And look, a lot of people have moved into that realm without even having to be told to. There's a huge population in the younger generations right now who they'll say things like they can't afford to buy a home or whatever it is, but in reality, they're renting because it's easier and it doesn't tie them down. They can live wherever they want, move wherever they want. They don't have to take care of the yard or the repairs or maintenance or the appliances or any of those things. And renting is very liberating for that type of lifestyle. But if you're like me, I'm not that old, I promise. I'm in my mid-30s. I didn't think, that was old until I started making sounds every time I bend down to tie my shoes. But the The problem is that someone like myself not only sees the financial asset that property and a home can provide, but also the fact that I want to be prepared, and you cannot be as prepared as you want to be always renting and always moving. You just can't. You have to sit down at some point and have a place of operations, right? Rip Curl Readiness, good to see you. Glad you're here. And you have to be somewhere sometimes. I don't know how else to say it. Am I exactly in the exact home and exact piece of property, exact part of the country that I always wanted to live in all of my dreams and fantasies? No, I don't think so. That's just not real life. But did compromises lead me to being able to have access to the resources that I have now? Yes. So all of that's important. But unfortunately, we're going to find more and more people being involved with this whole you'll own nothing and be happy scenario by choice, voluntarily, because it seems like a deal. And unfortunately, every generation past us is going to look at it that way, most likely, due to the fact that a lot of that's sold to us via the media, right? If you watch TV or movies or anything like that have come out recently, they're always trying to portray this idea of ultimate freedom. You have to be yourself and you can't be held down. You have to go where your heart takes you and find what you love and where you want to be. And people can't just do that unless they don't have any ties, right? So people aren't having kids early. People aren't buying houses. People aren't doing a lot of the things, which is okay if that's their choice. But I'm just telling you that that's a big part of this whole situation as well. I also want to say that the kids thing is interesting because like I said, I'm in my mid 30s and a lot of my close friends still don't have kids, and I'm sitting here like, man, I'm glad that a little bit later in life here I'll have that freedom of having adult children, whereas a lot of my friends won't have that freedom until a lot further down the road now. And it's just very interesting to me that, there's that change of concept of mindset as to always having to wait until you're ready for these things. And sometimes they just never come. So let's see. And PNP, nobody cares. Just shut the F up. It's fine. You could have left that message, Northern Girl. They already filtered it themselves. But here's the thing. I'm cool if you came here just to tell me to shut up, because then you can just be here and hang out, I guess. Either way, what I want to say is that things aren't looking good. We're possibly going to see hot conflict. And just a reminder, about a month, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before the invasion in Ukraine, most people were of the mindset that this isn't going to happen. Russia's not going to invade. You're not going to see this actually occur. It's a training exercise, and these things happen. It's an escalation, but they won't actually invade, okay? And I think, like, I had a video out that was like, there will be conflict. And a lot of people were like, you're just trying to spread all this nonsense, and there won't be, and nothing's going to happen. And of course, here we are. So what I'm trying to tell you is that don't be surprised if bigger, hotter conflict shows up. I won't be surprised. Do I want it to happen? No. Do I think that there's a good possibility of it happening? Yeah, I do actually at this point in time. But if it doesn't happen, great. That's what I'd prefer. And I won't be surprised then either, because I keep my options open, and you should too. Please stop working in absolutes, because you will absolutely be less prepared if you do that. And that's just how I feel about it. Now, House of Lamar, do you like black coffee? I will drink black coffee. There's some prerequisites I have. Like if I'm getting the fancy stuff, some Invader coffee or something like that, yeah, I'll drink it black just to get that full flavor. But if I'm drinking like trash coffee and I just need it for the boost, I'll probably put some cream in it just to kind of make the whole scenario a little bit less frightening. So, Peace Trade of America, 59 young here too. Heard that. Pony Girl, maybe we should step back in time and gather together as families used to, be there helping each other instead of thinking individually. Well, Pony Girl, I think there's some truth to that statement, but one of the issues with that is that we've all become more individual due to technology and due to the fact that people are becoming less savory, in all honesty. You guys are great, but a lot of people are, probably not that great. And it depends on who you associate with, but these are just things we have to keep in mind, okay? So yeah, I think that can be helpful, but it is what it is, okay? And I love this chat, but I just sometimes I see things and I don't even know if they're directed to me or if they're talking to somebody else in the chat. Either way, you guys feel free to say what you got to say. But if it's out of line or outlandish, it's going to probably get removed. And if just say it in a way that's acceptable. Criticism's fine, but don't be incendiary just because it doesn't help get your point across. I'll tell you that much. Just my opinion. Now, I will say on closing words, which is what we're going to call this. Okay. James Marks says, watch Vigilance Elite's most recent video on the energy crisis. The numbers on Russian oil here that are being circulated are false. Well, that might be true. But thanks for the tidbit. I appreciate it. Thank all of you for being here. And these are just considerations we have to have. Every week we should get together and do this just to kind of stay on top of what's going on. And at the same time, I am okay with thinking outside the box. I'm okay with some of these other pieces of information that you all send me. I really appreciate it. But if I can't vet something or verify it or validate its source, I have a hard time sharing it just because I don't want to lead people in the wrong direction. And I don't want to create panic around anything that may not exist. So keep those things in mind. Send me any intel you want. I always appreciate it. magicprepper@gmail.com. But I also may not share it just because reasons. There you go. I guess that's what I got. You guys are amazing, though. I really appreciate it. And honestly, I really enjoy being part of this community. And one of the reasons why I titled this live stream, The Preparedness Community Has to Be Ready, is because we have to be ready because other people won't be. And we have to be ready not only for ourselves, but for the fact that those other people won't be ready. And that is a problem in and of itself. So do your best. Keep preparing. Do what you guys need to do. I honestly think that we are in a situation right now where things are only going to get more interesting moving forward. And I don't like interesting. I like boring. It makes life a lot easier. Then we can just talk about ammo and, how to store food and what kind of bunker you want to build. Right now, we have to keep talking about everything going on in the world because it's out of control. Christian, how did I get so leaned out? Literally the most boring thing ever. Diet and exercise. I don't know what else to say. Limit my consumption, limit my caloric intake, exercise more, hit the treadmill, run, and here we are, down 45 pounds. I wish it wasn't so annoyingly boring because it's like the doctors are always right about that stuff, man. Stop telling me to exercise. It's annoying. And then here I am. But it is what it is. I did it in the interest of being healthy and prepared for any emergency situation, more so than trying to just lose weight. I wanted my physical fitness to be at the same level of my other areas of preparedness. So now that I can run for miles and I can, handle myself in the sense of like if I needed to pull myself up over a ledge, I could do that very well. But not everybody can. So those are things to consider and try to get ready for as well. You'd be surprised how much more important that's going to be than any of the other stuff we talk about in this community, but it'll be a lot more boring too. So you guys are all amazing. Thank you so much. Please. Oh, T-Rex, you don't have too much ammo and fuel. You don't. You have a great amount. I'm proud of you. But I want all of you to enjoy the rest of your night and make sure this week you're really thinking about possibilities of where this is all going to go. Because every day I wake up and start checking news feeds and kind of expect to see something I don't want to see. That's just where I'm at this point. And I do have my alternative media sources as well. And they are much more negative than the mainstream media in many ways right now. So it is what it is. But you guys are amazing. I will see you next week. And that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.